Thank you. Thank you very much to the organizers for inviting me to speak to you all, and thank you all for showing up this morning. I'm really happy to be able to talk to you. I think child health research is so important, and it's so amazing that you're all dedicating your lives to that. I'm just really happy to meet you, and I hope during this session that I'll get to find out a little bit about what you do, as well as explaining to you what I do and the opportunity that is there for you if you're interested in sharing your work with wider audiences. First off, I'll just check. How am I projecting at the back? Good? Okay. Please, can I nominate you if I start to fail? Yeah, thanks. Okay. So I'm the health and medical editor for The Conversation Canada. This is The Conversation Canada. This is our website. And first of all, I just want to get a sense in the room. If you could put your hands up, who's heard of The Conversation Canada? Okay, that's pretty good, like about half of you. Have any of you written for The Conversation Canada? Or had colleagues who've written for us? Yeah, and any of you read any of our articles, our health articles? Yeah, great, okay. So I'm speaking to about half of you who know a little bit about who we are, and half of you who I guess know nothing, which is great to know. So basically we launched in 2017. Actually, next week is our 2-year anniversary. I know that because I share a birthday with The Conversation Canada, which was stressful at the time. But we're part of this bigger international network of conversations, which began in Australia in 2011. So there is a Conversation Australia, there's a Conversation US, a Conversation UK, all been operating really successfully for several years. We also have one in Africa, Indonesia, Spain, France, and we just launched La Conversation in Canada recently. And we all do the same thing. We're working with scholars like yourselves, one-on-one, to produce what we call evidence-based journalism or explanatory journalism. And why are we doing that? Well, part of our mandate is really a principle of democratizing knowledge. It's moving siloed knowledge out of academia into the public sphere, into a place where more people can use it, whether you're looking at the general public, parents when they're parenting their kids, or policymakers. And we are finding that a lot of influential people are starting to read our work, which is great. Now, part of that speaks to what Andre was talking about last night. Those of you who heard him, this environment we're in an era of disputed facts and claims of fake news. So the evidence-based nature of what we do is super important. We're actually trying to put out a really quality journalism product out into the public sphere where people can rely on the information that's been provided. And this is in the context, again, Andre spoke about this nicely yesterday, which was great. It's in the context of an industry in complete crisis. Traditional newsrooms are really strapped now. They no longer have the resources, many of them, to produce the journalism that the public needs. So in-depth and balanced coverage of topics drawing on expert knowledge is hard to find. So now, I'm just gonna ask you all, actually, a couple of questions. In your opinion, how well does the mainstream media report on child health specifically? And, do you think that more investment in expert journalism could improve child health? And maybe you can start thinking about, from your own research, one story that that should be communicated that isn't being communicated by the media or talked about at all by the media. Any thoughts on that? And I kind of want to make it a little bit interactive just to begin here.
I think I see all this screen time work recently. And so I know it's being reported on, but I feel like the reporting is biased in that it's always sensational.
Right.
It's always like 10% of kids are watching 7 hours of screens a day. And they're
That's a lot,
so
hey?
much worse than the kids who are watching none.
Uh-huh.
And so I think that that's really scary as a parent.
Yeah.
Because I know then I will be texting my friends and saying, like, my daughter's watching a half an hour of Daniel Tiger. Like, am I rotting her brain? And
yeah.
So, like, I see it, but I think sometimes I want more moderate guidelines around it. And I know that's hard because, like Andre was saying last night, that's not how things get sold.
So you're looking for more nuanced kind of reporting?
And maybe that's what you're trying to do. Like, I really want to
know
sometimes the middle ground.
Yeah. Okay, that's super interesting. Thank you. Yeah.
Often, the things that we read in the newspaper are related to discovery, an article, publication, and it's well done, but it's just one moment, right? So there is a paper out,
Right.
and then, so it's well done, but this is not really what we need only. We need some advocacy for more sustainable, kind of support in terms of funding.
Right.
And we don't, we do that at our level, talking to CCHCSP, but we don't really get the feeling that the media, the public understand that child health is underfunded. We don't really get, what we should
Yeah.
to serve properly the populations. And of course, children don't vote and all this.
Right.
That. So we get the sense that we are not well supported by the media from this perspective, not because they don't want it, but they don't do the right.
Yeah. Well, you have a great story there, actually. Child health is underfunded, So maybe you can write that. Yeah. 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 Super interested in that, I think. Yeah.
I used to do a lot of research on wait times for mental health, and so that's something that often gets picked up in the media. And even last night, actually, a colleague emailed me, like, I saw the CTV news on wait times, like all these kids are waiting to access mental health services. But I often find when I read those, there's no, like, action, or, like, it's not action-oriented, like, what's the next step? Like, what should we be doing, and what's feasible? So it seems to be sometimes sensationalized around like what happened at one center or one agency, but it's not more of a system level like solution.
Okay, I love that because I actually love solution-focused stories, and I really try and encourage people I work with to even if their research isn't specifically advocating for a solution, even just to like think themselves and try and put some solutions in there, because I think when you're offering something much more to the reader if you whether you're talking about system level solution or personal solutions that they can implement in their own lives. So yeah, I really appreciate that comment. Someone else? Yeah.
There's an endless appetite for breakthrough news.
Yes.
Which on closer inspection seldom are.
Yes.
Because the last thing that is typically asked of the inventor is,
yes.
How soon will this be available? When it's sometime off in a distant future.
Yes. This is challenging because we're working with human beings who, we're even in my job, I'm still working with the regular news consumer, and it's true. Like there is an appetite for big stories, breakthroughs, with less of an understanding of the incremental way that science happens. So yeah, I completely agree.
Well, I think that for me, the operative word in your questions is mainstream. So there's no problem with volume of news and journalism. Now there's a problem with quality.
Mm-hmm.
And the great stuff is in the mainstream media has to compete with so much else. There's this dilution effect. And I think that's the big challenge, is how do you make a story about child health compelling enough without sensationalizing it.
Yeah.
All the rest of it. That's the biggest challenge in the media to me nowadays.
Yeah, I agree. And maybe I'll talk a little bit later about one of the ways we try and do that is this sort of balance between a headline and the content of the article. Often the place of greatest pushback I find with writers is on the headline, because we tend to have to push towards more sensationalist headlines to get people to read the story. But that's how we sort of work the balance, is let's get them in, but then the story itself, you have control over shaping that as a nuanced, complex piece, So yeah, thanks for that comment. Yeah.
The usual target audience is parents, like mainstream, for child health.
For child health. Mm-hmm.
But there's rarely news for teachers in the schools.
Right.
They're with the kids all day.
Right.
And I work with teachers all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the biggest problem is it
Yes.
especially in French.
Right.
The other layer.
Yes.
So I'm always hired to just give them basic information that they don't have.
Yes.
Get from their initial training, and I'm in literacy, so helping literacy. And I'm always looking for new ways to bring this knowledge out in French to teachers in the schools.
Yeah.
And this is so hard for me to do.
I wonder, are there any sort of niche publications that are targeted at teachers, union stuff?
Yes,
or?
but often it's related to a company or
Right.
to a specific, it's not like
Right.
conversation.
Right. Yeah.
It's not neutral.
Yeah.
There's always a link to a product or something.
Yeah, I see.
So that's really hard
Yeah.
to reach them.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Thanks for all those comments. That really helps me get a sense of your perspective on the media coverage of, the area in which you are really deeply involved. And one of the reasons I asked is because you may not know this, but as health researchers, you actually have more credibility with the general public than journalists do today. So there was a 2019 Edelman Trust Barometer, a study which showed that 64% of Canadians rated academics as very or extremely credible, compared with 43% of Canadians who rated the media or journalists as very or extremely credible. So it's a little bit of an opportunity. And that's what, at the Conversation Canada, that's what we try to kind of leverage. So the way we work is that we combine a team with a lot of journalistic expertise, working one-on-one with researchers like you guys who have really in-depth expert knowledge to create like this kind of winning combination, right? It's a collaboration to produce a really top quality product. My boss calls it the peanut butter cup. I don't remember actually whether I'm the peanut butter and you're the chocolate, or you're the peanut butter, I'm the chocolate. But together we make this delicious Reese's peanut butter cup, apparently. So just to explain how we actually finance this, our funding model is that we're funded by member universities. These are our current funders. There are a few foundations, and we also have some money from Genome Canada and SSHRC. But mostly it's member universities. Depending on the size of university, they pay a different tier of membership rate. Now, we work with academics across Canada, regardless of whether their university is a member. But member universities, they get special privileges for actually funding our operations. We send out special call-outs, stories that we're interested in writing. They get first access to that. They have access to metrics, university dashboards where they can see exactly how many articles have been written by their researchers, what the audience stats and readership are on those. So this enables us to, to cover our operational costs, and we can create free content, free high-quality journalistic content, which brings me to our republishing model. So what we actually do is every story we produce, it's published on our website, The Conversation Canada, which is becoming a destination in itself. A lot of our readers now are actually reading on the website itself. We promote our stories every day in a newsletter to subscribers. But also all our stories go out on the Canadian Press Newswire every day. And they're available for free using a Creative Commons license for republication by any media outlet globally. And we're a team of now 8. We're growing. We started off at 4. And one of our team spends her days really diligently pitching every story that we produce to editors of newspapers, magazines, and websites around Canada and also sometimes globally. So these are, I went through the stories that I've worked on in the last 2 years, and these are some of our top republishers of health stories that I've worked on. So you can see, there's some Canadian publications like Maclean's, Winnipeg Free Press. Honestly, they're published throughout all the Canadian newspapers. I just put some of them up here to give an example. But we're also looking at international publications like the Daily Mail in the UK, CNN in the US, the Independent in the UK, the Washington Post, Scientific American, National Geographic Indonesia. There's online destinations like Salon, News 24, the World Economic Forum. You know, that's a real policy audience. Global News picks up a lot of our stories. The Medical Post, Medical Express, a lot of our stories. The Weather Network, that's the yellow squiggly one there, is one of our top republishers as an organization, not just for health. And this is a very, very interesting that the Weather Network is trusted for its accuracy these days in predicting the weather and has actually become one of Canada's top news destinations in terms of public trust. So there you go. Yeah, so there are many other smaller niche publications that we publish our stuff to. Today's Parent, actually, I don't know if it's on here. Yeah, TP there. They take a lot of our stories about kids, you know, relating to early childhood. So this is not health specific. This is our entire sort of organization. This is the reach and our readership. You know, so you can see like about 30% of the readers are coming from Canada, about 30% from the United States, and then the rest are distributed globally. There's quite a lot in Australia. You know, India, often we get quite a lot of republication in India as well. And those are our top republishers as an organization there. You see the Weather Network up there, CNN. And just briefly, last year, these are the numbers. We published 977 articles from 871 academics. 16 million reads. And we're really always working on the gender balance too. So last year, 60% of our articles were written by men, 40% by women. That might not sound amazing, but given that across the mainstream media, it's more like 80% by men and 20% by women, you know, we're working really hard at that. And you know, in some disciplines, there simply are a lot more men who are working in those disciplines, so we tend to get a lot more men covering business. But I don't know if you know about Shari Graydon of Informed Opinions, but if you're interested in this, she has a great research resource called Gender Tracker, where you can track up-to-date statistics for like the day or the week, how many men versus how many women have published in the commentary pages of Canadian media.
You need to do more stuff on child health than you have your balance.
Right, okay. So who can write for us? Well, all of our authors have deep expertise in the subject they're writing about. To submit an article, you simply must have a current academic position at a Canadian university, and this includes profs, lecturers, adjunct, emeritus, postdocs, and PhDs. Masters and medical students can occasionally write, but they must have a prof as a co-author. And I have to say that I love working with PhD students. I don't know if any of you in the room are PhD students, but or postdocs, but you know, I find it to be a beautiful experience normally to be working with younger scholars. And it definitely offers younger scholars more, I think, in terms of really opening them up to becoming a public scholar. It's a collaborative process that we work through. First, if you're interested in writing for us, you sign up as an author on our homepage, and then there's a button on the homepage where you can submit a pitch. So you send me a pitch describing the story you want to write. I'm getting more and more pitches, so you know, I used to be able to take them all, and now I can't take. I can take a small proportion of them. So what we're going to work on a little bit today is how to write a good pitch, if you're interested in doing that, because I'm really busy now, so I have to kind of sort through them pretty fast and just figure out. So the way you write the pitch really influences whether I accept it or not. If I'm interested in a story, then I try to arrange a phone call with you. That's really important to me, is to chat for 15 minutes, half an hour, and really learn what it is that you're doing, what your research is, explain a little bit about how to write for us. And I'll be doing that here today, so I wouldn't need to explain that to you guys. But I find that this conversation is very helpful. You might think you have this amazing story, and then we talk, and then I find out that you sort of thought that was the best story because you had some conceptions about what the media would want, but actually what you're really passionate about is something else, and there's this other really great story buried in there. Or maybe I have a sense of something that's coming up in the news that we really need someone to write to, and it turns out that you're the perfect person for that. So that call is really important. And then I commission the story, and when you have to submit a draft really varies. If it's something that happened in the news, like Doug Ford made some massive health cuts, imagine, and we need a story immediately responding to that, then I might ask you to write that in a day or two. And sometimes people can do that. For some people that's harder, but we're only talking 700 words. Mostly with health researchers, it tends to be that they're working on a project, they have a paper coming out, and they want to do some media around the paper. In that case, it's great to contact me a month or two in advance, and we have a lot of time to work out that story. I would now say on average, I ask people to submit a draft within a week or two, which seems to be workable for an academic to do that, because you're not professional journalists, you're not necessarily okay with producing 700 words within the next hour, and I totally get that, and you have busy schedules too. Just in terms of process, you then submit me the draft, it enters my edit queue, I send you a first edit, you respond with your feedback and suggestions, and it's a collaboration. So I look at you as the expert, and that your job is to maintain the rigor and accuracy of what you're writing. Being responsible to the research literature, all the stuff that you're good at. My job is helping you translate that piece of work to a wider audience. And sometimes that might involve me changing words that then compromise your work, and then you tell me that, and then I change them back, right? Or sometimes I want you to do something, you're like, no, I can't, and then we just try and, come to a compromise on that. Then the story is proofread by a second editor, and then I ask for your final approval before the piece is published. So what's in it for you? Well, that last piece, really, I ask for your final approval before the piece is published. So you see the whole thing. You see it with the headline. You see it with the images. You control the story. We don't publish something that you don't want us to publish. It's not the same as being interviewed by CBC and giving them this long interview, and then they take a quote of 30 seconds out of context, and then you feel ripped off, right? You get to control this story. You also get access to an author dashboard. This is an example, one of my writers. And on the author dashboard, it shows you, it's really cool. You get to see how many people have read your story, what countries they come from, where it's been picked up and republished, and you get to track the life of a story on there. And this is honestly so interesting. Some of them go crazy immediately if it's a hot topic, and they get thousands of reads in the first day. Some of them get 100, 200. But then a month down the line, they get republished somewhere, a huge spike in readership. A year down the line, someone republishes them, another huge spike in readership. So your story is never done. It's always there and has the potential for more readers. And sometimes just these random things happen. It gets republished in the Ukraine, and then suddenly you have 50,000 people reading your story in the Ukraine, and you never would have imagined that would happen. Just quickly, if your university is a member, they get access to a university dashboard like that too. That's the University of Saskatchewan. So I asked a couple of people who've written regularly for me what the benefit of it is for them, why they do it. Some of you know Sherry, right, from the University of Calgary, and this is what she says, It's the most expedited method of getting child development research and knowledge into the hands of parents. Yeah. She always tries to offer some parenting tips at the end of each piece. And she basically says, if after reading our article on how to keep kids safe online, a handful of parents decide to sit down and talk to their kids about online safety using the tips we laid out, then that's a good day. And Sherry's a busy woman, but she finds it's worthwhile for her work to continually publish stories through us. So another one, Brin, PhD candidate. I'll let you read it. I don't need to read it out. Meadow Schroeder, again from the University of Calgary. I don't know if some of you might know her too. Yeah. She has written, I think, the health story with the biggest readership we've ever had. I'll show you the stats in a minute, but an incredibly successful story on ADHD, which was just kind of, I think, blew her mind in terms of how many people read that story. Do you guys have a sense of how many people read your academic publications? 30? Yeah, really? Yeah, so these numbers are really quite different. And I think the second point she makes here is really valuable and important, because sometimes when I talk to academics, they're like, oh, I've got a grant to write, and I'm writing this paper, and I'm writing this paper. I can't take on anything more. But, just read what she says here, point 2. I probably spent an afternoon of my time, and it's had more impact than any of the manuscripts I spent much longer writing. So, we ask for 700 words, and it's short, and it really doesn't need to take a lot of time, because I'm here to help you with that piece, to edit it, to really brush it up and make it strong. And people are increasingly finding that granting agencies are valuing this kind of work. We did an survey with our authors, and 62% of them strongly agreed that this was useful for their career. 5% strongly disagreed. I don't know who they were. And this is interesting just in terms of what does it lead to when you write for the conversation. Actually, somebody who I worked with on a piece had a book commissioned because a publisher read the story and was fascinated by the story. Most often what happens is you'll get radio interviews. Media will call you up. They're really interested. They want to do a radio piece, like CBC or a local CBC will want to do a radio piece. Sometimes people have been taken out to lunch by a minister of health or something.
Can you describe what a finished article actually looks like?
Sure, yeah.
The author is acknowledged? Is there some...
Why don't I just break out here and... Yeah, I'm on the web, so it should... Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Oh, no. Oh, there we go. Damn, that's not what I wanted to do either. I'm trying. Here we go. So this is our website. This is the health page. Since we're talking about Sherry, let's open up. This is a story from the University of Calgary. Now there you see, like, it's a headline, which is a little sensationalist, perhaps. Oh, I thought I was connected. Any thoughts on that?
Sometimes you just need to turn it off and turn it back on. Turn the Wi-Fi off.
Oh, it's not?
Let's see if there's a Ethernet on. But you would need the connector.
Yeah.
Could you tether?
Hotspot you. That's
Oh,
exactly
you can
what
do
I'm gonna
that? Thank you.
You're everywhere.
Oh, like City TV.
Yeah.
Wi-Fi, where's my hotspot? And
It's like you're like the cavalry coming in just at the right time.
Am I not being aggressive? No, I'm not. What do you mean? Remember this network? Okay, let's try it again.
Maybe the password says invalid password.
There you go. You
Is
should
it
be
working?
good now. Yep, you're tethered.
That's amazing. Let's see. Yeah, thank you.
I'll sit right here.
So this is what her story looks like on our website. These are the three authors on the right. She made her master's student the main author of that piece. She wrote the draft of that piece. And this piece came out 8 a.m. in the morning, I think last Monday, to time with a journal embargo. So it's a new paper published in JMA Pediatrics, and we published this at exactly the same time. And what I can do, because she gave me permission to do this, is to visit Sherry's personal dashboard, where we can see all the articles that she's written, and this is what she sees. She's pretty prolific, look at that, right? 16 articles for us over the last year or so. She's had 336,000 readers, right? Compare that to, I guess, 16 times 30, right? It's a lot more. She's been republished in Today's Parent, News 24, The Independent, the World Economic Forum, Scientific American, National Post, Mamma Mia, So Today, CBS News, Medical Express, U of T, HuffPost Canada, like, you know, it goes on, Halifax Chronicle, Salon, Newsweek, Public Library of Science, Vancouver Sun, HuffPost. So her work, instead of just reaching a few scholars in her field, and she really puts an effort in each of her pieces to give, as she said in her quote, to give concrete advice to parents. So her work has reached a ton of people. Yeah?
How does it work for the translation piece? Like number 2 is, I don't think that's...
Yeah, that's Indonesian. Right, that's the translation of one of the stories. Yeah, and there's a French translation here too. Yeah, there's another French translation.
So then is it the outlet that takes care of the translation?
These are our Indonesian office. Yeah, so when they see a story in English that they like, they ask the author if they may translate it. And then it gets translated into Indonesian. It's amazing, right? And it reaches a whole other audience of parents in Indonesia. The French ones, sometimes they used to be translated by our office in Paris, but now we have La Conversation. So we're routinely translating a lot of our popular pieces from French to English and English to French. Not all of them, because we don't have the capacity yet, but the popular ones that feel like they'd be good with both audiences. Yeah?
Are the republished versions whole and unaltered?
Yes, they have to be whole and unaltered. What can change is the imagery, and sometimes the republisher doesn't have the rights to use the same photos that we use. Sometimes we'll use author photos and they don't want them republished. We try not to do that. We want the republishers to be able to use the images we use, so mostly they can and they do. But they're allowed to change the images. Sometimes they just want a different look and feel to that story. They're also allowed to play with the headline. But the body of the story must stay exactly the same. Yeah. And we ask them, we have certain guidelines around republishing they must follow. One of those is to use a counter code so we can track the readership of the piece on their website. Yeah. Okay. See if I can get back to where I was now. Where was I? Thanks for that question. I was going to show you a story, but I obviously should do that earlier so you have a better sense of what I'm talking about, right? Okay. So, it's not what I said. So what makes a good health story from our perspective? Like, one thing is if you can link it to a current news event. It's very helpful because remember, we're pitching our stories to editors. So for them, they're looking for content related to what's going on right now. So it can be very helpful to link it to a current news event. You don't have to, though. Only if it works. Like, there's no point in forcing the point, you know. Does it draw on new health research that's about to be published? This is what makes a lot of our really successful health stories. We're creating the health news. We're putting out a story as you're publishing your brand new work, which is going out into the world today. And you, instead of waiting for a journalist to, like Andre was saying yesterday, to, you know, react, decide, you know, they might get the story, the journal publication a couple of days before. Do I want to write a story about that? Then they might call you up, and then they might write about your work. This offers you the opportunity to write about your work and get it out there the very first moment that your paper is out there. And then a lot of the media outlets are like, well, we don't need to write a story anymore. There's one here. Let's publish this one. So you're controlling the story in that way. Does it offer a unique or unexpected perspective on a widely debated health issue? This is really, like, if you can do this, this is really crucial. Like, just offering a new way of looking at something, or a new way of contextualizing something, or so you can write a really successful and interesting story on something that's been written about a million times just by presenting it in a new light, offering a new perspective. Does it offer a practical solution to a health challenge? Practical solutions are really, really valuable. Or another example, does it offer a clear and simple explanation of a complex condition? So, you know, some of the stories I commissioned, they're what we call evergreen. They're timeless stories. It doesn't need to be published today or tomorrow or on any specific date. They're just stories that give more solid, reliable information to the public about a health issue, a common health issue, right? It could be an explainer on diabetes. It could be like, you know, on lifestyle and diabetes, how to live your life in a way that minimizes your risks. It could be somebody who works in nutrition research might write about current diet fads. What does the research actually say? Like, is it good for you to go keto or like vegan or, right? Child health, maybe. So I had a really great story from somebody who wrote about pain, children's pain, how to manage children's pain in hospital. And it was kind of aimed at parents, but also clinicians, right? Because there's a lot that can be done to help children with pain on a hospital visit that often isn't. So, yeah, there are many different ways that you can write a story, depending on what your work is. These are our top health stories since we launched 2 years ago. So Meadows, yeah, it is the number one. 14 signs your daughter may have ADHD. And that has had like nearly 500,000 readers. Imagine that. Microdosing psychedelics is a super popular topic, so that got a lot of reads, and that was written by 2 graduate students. So that's 2 grad students with 250,000 readers of their ongoing work.
What is engagement? Engagements? The last column?
That is, so you know what it is? It's in our dashboard, we have a space where researchers can add in media engagements after their publication. Most of them don't, which is why they all say 0, because they don't remember. But it means if you got contacted by CBC, then you can add it in there. Yeah, I think these guys have had many media engagements. They just haven't put them in their dashboard.
How do you measure the level of readiness? When you say read, what does it mean to read? Is it just click on the article, or do you need to spend at least 10 minutes on the article?
So I think it's measuring opening up the article, but we also measure how many people read how far. and how many people read to the bottom. And I think our, I know I'm being video recorded and I'm not entirely sure about the statistic, but I think it's around 45% of people read to the bottom. Something like that. Yeah, more than I imagined, actually. Yeah. So as far as I'm aware, these reads are just, yes, they're just opening up the article. Some of those readers might not read more than the first paragraph. Yeah. But I think around half of them are reading the whole thing. Yeah. Yeah, we do. We do. So one thing I mentioned earlier is the call-outs that we do if we have a special request. They go to the communications departments of our member universities. And we tend to work with the communications departments only of our member universities, actually. But they also, I have relationships with some of them, and they will just send me an email often like, hey, I have this research, you're doing this really interesting work. What do you think? Would you be interested in a story on this? And then, yeah, so they sometimes send people to me, and sometimes I will reach out to them, like, do you know anyone? I need something on vaccination today. Who can I ask, kind of thing, yeah. And these are our top 5 health stories over the last 6 months. And these, I think, were, every one of these was based on a new piece of research that was published in a journal. I'm doing more and more of that. And these have been super successful. Now, the numbers are less because the stories have been live for less time. The readership grows over time. But still, 100,000 people have opened up those stories. So aspirin, low-carb breakfast for diabetes, pelvic floor physiotherapy, cheese and blood sugar, childhood infections and antibiotics, mental illness. Yeah. And I'm just going to give you a few examples of different ways you can frame a story, How could you tell a health story about the research you do? You can answer a common question. Think about your research in relation to the questions that parents are constantly asking themselves. Parents are constantly discussing sleep training and whether it's going to damage their child or not. So, this was simply an article which targeted that question, which is in many parents' minds. Deliver a surprising solution. This was an amazing piece of research. Who knew? You've broken one arm, you do exercises on the other one, it strengthens that arm. That's mind-blowing to most, the regular public. Yeah, it's a great story. Lyme disease. It's a common health fear. How can we actually deliver some information which is useful to people in terms of dealing with that health fear? How can we help protect ourselves against Lyme? You can comment on a political event, public health cuts in Ontario. And these kind of pieces are less about a piece of research that you've just done. They're more about drawing from your expertise, your wide career in health research, your bigger expertise in the area. I'm always looking for Indigenous health researchers to write on Indigenous health because there's such a vast health inequality in this country, and also non-Indigenous researchers who are doing really good work in collaboration with Indigenous communities. So if you know anyone, please send them my way. And cover underreported issues, This is a great story. And some of the stories I work on with people, I know that they're not going to get 500,000 readers, right? Because they're just not sort of sexy, they're not trendy, they're not targeting that kind of, they're not clickbaity, whatever. But they're really important pieces of research, and if 10 policymakers read that, or 1 policymaker reads that story, then it's worth putting out there. So I'm always willing to work on stories which won't have a huge mass public uptake, but which are just really important stories to put out there.
Here's this picture. Where did it come from? Was that something that the author provided, or
no, mostly. No. So authors are welcome to submit pictures, And sometimes they have really great images related to their research, and then we use them. I would say 95% of the time, I provide the imagery, and we have access to image banks. This one comes from Shutterstock Image Bank, but yes, this one will have been used in other places. It's a stock photograph. Yeah, we also have access to the Canadian Press Image Bank. So for more news-related pieces, we have news photography that we can use. Yeah, we use also Unsplash. That's another, that's a free photo bank that we use. Yeah, so, I mean, I always encourage researchers, though, if you have good, and we need high-quality images. If you have good images, you know, I'd love to use them because they are unique and original and very specific to what you're doing, you know. But I'll always ask the researcher whether the imagery is okay, because sometimes I don't even get it right. You know, they're like, well, that's not actually the procedure that I'm describing, because I'm not the expert in your field. So we always work together on those two. Mm-hmm.
So on this particular story,
yeah.
So how do you actually ensure that the message is completely evidence-based?
Right. That's great.
So this is a topic I happen to know quite a lot, and I'm not, you know, certainly not criticizing the idea, but the evidence in terms of, you know, is it beneficial for all children in the long term is not there yet, right?
Yeah.
So how do you ensure that, you know, people that come to you with an article, they have their passions, particularly on this kind of very hot topics, they keep some kind of equipoise and balance and, you know, objectivity in what they provide.
I really appreciate this question, and it's something that we are continually grappling with. So because we don't do peer review, right? We're producing journalism, and we have to put I have a couple of answers for you. One of them is that we have to put quite a lot of trust in our authors to be responsible to that bigger literature. And this is something that I kind of communicate in every conversation I have, that I need you to really be honest and true in what you're writing, like to be writing accurately about your own research, but also in the context of the wider literature, right? Not to misrepresent. And that I can't be an expert in all of those areas. And if we did peer review, we'd never publish anything. So there's a risk in there. Now, there have been a couple of hot topics where I've worked with somebody and they've put out what they have told me is, you know, this is the truth. And then we've had some comeback. This is not the truth, you know? This is the truth, right? And these are two very esteemed researchers in the same field arguing absolutely radically different things. And what we've done in that case is said, okay, tell us your truth, you know, and we published a companion piece so that we've had two alternative perspectives on the same issue, both written by really highly esteemed, like long-time researchers. And we published them next to each other and really tried to show that, you know, even in science, truth is not always that simple.
They see it as a disclosure?
Yes. Yes, so everybody's required to fill in the disclosure statement, which is published right there on the story. And we ask everyone to disclose every kind of funding that you have had in relation to the topic that you're writing about. That includes NSERC and SHRC and CIHR, you know, and it includes pharmaceuticals, and it includes, we ask them to talk about membership on boards, like advocacy commitments, all of that, to disclose everything. If we don't disclose something, it could be a huge problem, but we consider that everything that is disclosed is then at the reader's discretion to you know, understand where that person is coming from and what their commitments are. Yeah.
The links, are
yes.
they to PubMed? Are they to the full-length article?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, great question. And so because, as I've said, you know, evidence-based is what we're all about. And because we're doing journalism, we can't do citations and references like you might do in a traditional piece. This is how we do it. We use hyperlinks. And I ask authors, every time you make a claim in your story, I want a hyperlink through to evidence to back up that claim. Now, it's not ever going to be as rigorous as an academic paper. You're not going to reference like 15 different papers in your 1 point, so you have to pick and choose. But what I do ask is that these references are to peer-reviewed journal articles in the main. And the way we work it is you just need to link to an abstract. Now, of course, if you've published in an open source, that's fantastic. But we're okay with a link just to an abstract and a paywall, because our feeling is that anyone who really, really wants to read that academic paper is going to have an institutional access to that academic paper. If it's a member of the general public, what they want to see is that there is evidence backing up that point. They don't need to read, the methods and the findings and all of that. Yeah.
Back to Thierry's point about the quality of the work that is being done. Do you have any kind of filter, like we don't do predatory journals, how we define that, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Do you have any sort of filter about where the item was published? Does it have to be a PubMed listed journal or not?
No, we don't. Again, that's an author trust thing.
That sort of starts butting against peer review, I guess. But
yeah, it's an author trust thing, We work with people who are in reputable positions in their field, and we have to trust that they're publishing in reputable places. Yeah, we couldn't really start saying to people, well, you published in this journal, not that one. And
it's interesting. As a gastroenterologist and a nutrition expert in the field of nutrition in particular, so much work is sensationalized. And I think the public is generally frustrated with the fact that, your eggs are good for you and texture not good for you. And they're always interesting articles to read, but I think at some point with the accumulated years of conflicting information, people get a little frustrated and they start mistrusting the science.
Yeah.
It's an interesting phenomenon of how responsible media should help. Should responsible media help filter some of that, or only place their pieces in the context of what has been published previously?
I know, it's a hard balance to strike. I always encourage people to contextualize their work and try and tell the bigger picture as well. People don't always necessarily want to do that if they've, had this new piece of research and it says one thing.
Studies are published in top journals. Right?
Yeah.
And there's a recent meta-analysis by John Leonetis, I don't know if you saw that. And he basically plotted on a graph the relative impact on your health, and it's like all over the place. You should all check it out. It's an amazing piece.
Yeah, so these are all they're great questions, and what we do is not perfect, but what we're trying to do is something better, basically. And we do rely on your participation in that, and your rigor and your honesty in that.
If people want to comment on the conversation, like readers,
yeah,
is there
you can.
section?
Yeah, there's a comment section at the bottom, and sometimes that can be not really in health, but in some of our more political stories. That can be fiery, and sometimes, we have community standards around that, and we moderate that. Yeah?
You said earlier you worked with reputable experts, but how do you determine this?
Well, the academic system determines that. We use the academic system to determine that.
How does that look like? Do you only take stories from people working in universities?
Yeah. Yeah, nobody can write for us who doesn't have a position at a Canadian university. We get lots of requests, and we do not accept anyone who doesn't have a position in a Canadian university. And master's students can write, but they need a supervising prof with them. PhD up, we allow them to write on their own.
So physicians, for example, who don't have
Most seem to have a university affiliation.
You have to have a university
They would. They would. Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. They have to have some kind of engagement with research. Yeah. Although we do, sometimes they're more clinical supervisors, and that's okay. But yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we just rely on the academic system to do that kind of filtering.
But you showed some stories from graduate students as well, so do they have to be supervised or?
So like I said, a master's student can't write a story for us without their supervisor on the story. Their supervisor needs to be an author on the story. Their supervisor needs to approve the story. PhD, they can write by themselves. Yeah. Yeah. But they always consult their supervisors too, because they don't want to step outside of the boundaries of, I find. Yeah. So this is how you pitch. This is our website where it's circled. That's where you can pitch an idea. And so one thing we really ask is, if you'd like to write a story for us, don't sit down and write the story. First, pitch the idea. Have the conversation, and then write the story. And we have a pitching, I'll show you in a second, a place that'll ask you a series of questions when you write a pitch. Okay. First, I'm just going to show you a couple of successful ones. This one, a couple of recent successful ones. This one is on how vaccines work, boosting the immune system to do a better job. And what I like about this one is the significance on the right there. She says, breaking news just popped up on my screen outlining how New York City has just declared the measles outbreak a health emergency. This is shocking to see. A lot of the media pieces in circulation have one of two narratives. But are we really sure people understand how vaccines even work? So this piece will break down how vaccines work to help the immune system to do a better job than it already does. So she's read the media coverage on this hot, contentious issue. She's found a place where she can contribute something that isn't out there already, something that can be really helpful information to the public, and she's pitching that as a story. So we ran that story. Another successful pitch. As many as 30,000 Canadian women may be suffering from an undiagnosed inherited bleeding disorder. Again, super interesting. Something people don't know about, something that could really help people. Oh, and with that, she tagged it to World Haemophilia Day. Now, I find communications departments in universities are like really, 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 really into like World AIDS Day and like World Cancer Day. And honestly, we're not so into those days. Like, I don't find that really increases the readership of a story, but we'll, sure. Like if you want us to publish this on World Haemophilia Day, then sure, So what's your story? We have a little bit of time left, and one of the things I want to do is actually get you right now, right here, right now, to look at this pitch page, which asks you in one sentence, 50-word limit, what's your story? What's the significance? Key points? And I wonder if I can just ask you to sit for 3 or 4 minutes with a pen and paper or a computer, think about your research, what you're doing now, what's coming up for you. If you had to submit me a pitch right now, what's the thing that you're passionate about? What's the thing that's driving that you would really like to put out there in the media?
But you would recommend to really pick a story that has already been published, right?
If you're talking about your research?
Yes.
Sometimes I'll take a story that is where you have research sort of in development. You haven't got a publication.
Have been published and we're still kind of working on it.
Yeah, no, that's totally fine. That's normal for a lot of people, right? Yeah. What we do is that if you're giving some conclusions, we'll say they're preliminary. It's preliminary research if the paper hasn't been published yet. But people will often write a story out of like their history of research and what other people have written and drawing a whole bunch of stuff together. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know if I can do that. Control plus, okay. I have a Mac, yeah. Command plus. Let's see. I'm in PowerPoint. Yeah, why don't I take you to the website? Thank you for the suggestion. Let's see if we can do that. Now I'm going to have to... That's a good idea. If you're on the internet and you have your computer. Let's see if I can do this without having to log myself out. I'm ready to submit a pitch. Yeah, it lets me. Is that any better? Now I can...
Yeah, there you go. A little bit thicker maybe? One more time. There you go.
Does that work? Can you all see? Yeah, okay. Does anyone object if I take a picture of you? You all good?
So would you recommend people to use their academic email?
Yes, please.
Because, like, for example, for us, we use tickets, but we should probably use our...
If you can use your university, yeah.
Because your connection...
As long as you're going to receive those emails to that email, yes, please, yeah. In our system, it connects you to the university using your email, so it's very, very helpful if you can do that.
And I noticed there's no universities from Quebec. Is that changing with the French version in your supporters?
Yeah, hopefully. We're always recruiting.
Like even McGill is not there, I don't think.
No, I don't think McGill is a funder. Yeah. I'm not sure. I'm not actually equipped to answer that question as to where we're at with Quebec universities as funders. But I can get back to you.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Should change.
Yeah, I mean, we only launched La Conversation in September. Yeah. Oops.
If you're affiliated with the university and you want to write an article with some community positions, can you be co-authors?
Then they don't have a university affiliate.
They don't have an appointment with you.
No, they can't.
So anybody that's on the
Yes, we do have, for special situations, we can use, we have another category, which is not author, it's collaborator. And we've done that sometimes for Indigenous writers. Like,
That bring a special expertise.
yes, yes, and we can do that sometimes for, yeah, if there's a reason for that. Generally, we just, and sometimes we've acknowledged people at the bottom. And what I do recommend people to do is, like, if you want to acknowledge someone who is on your research, but they're not able to write the article with you, they don't qualify for authorship, you can reference them in the piece, honor them in the piece, link to their profiles, that kind of thing. Yeah. But yeah, I think a community physician, you know, theoretically.
You have done a cross appointment, but just as a teaching, like adjunct, but that counts, right?
Adjunct's fine, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Because they get residents in their office, so they need to have some sort of affiliation.
Yeah, right. How about I give you one more minute, and then I'll ask for some brave volunteers. All right, who has a story they can pitch me? First volunteer. Doesn't need to be perfect, just an idea.
I have one.
Uh-huh.
Around 80% of medications given to neonates suffering from various conditions have not been properly evaluated and are not formally approved by Health Canada.
Oh God, that's amazing. Yeah, I'm going to sign you up after this.
It's not new, but
Yeah, but do most people know that? You know, probably not, right?
I don't know if the public knows that.
No, I don't think so. Yeah. And so is this your own research, or this is?
It's not my own research, it's a topic of interest
Yeah.
in our community for sure.
And so clearly you'd have a lot of research to draw from in that story to pull in there. Yeah. Yeah. And would you go into why? Like why? Why is this?
So as a significance, I wrote, many neonates are given medications without evidence for efficacy and safety. For many medications, the right dose or durations of treatment is not well known. And there is no appropriate formulations available for many medications, so the risk for error is very significant.
And why is it? Is it because it's so hard to do research on neonates? Is that why?
No, I mean, and then, I conclude that other countries like the US, Australia, and the European community are investing in research on medicinal products.
Oh, okay. So it's just that there's been no investment in research.
Canada is lagging, and Canadian children deserve the same scrutiny and regulatory, overseeing than others. So.
What's your name? What's your name? Yeah.
Well, we can talk about that.
Okay. No, I just wanted to put a name to you so I can remember this. Terry? Yeah. Yeah, I would love to work with you on that story. I think that's a really great story. Thank you. Anyone?
I've got one.
Yeah, go for it.
So the story would be gene replacement therapy is a single life-saving dose worth $3.1 million, which in the U.S. is a big thing now with these advanced molecular therapies being so expensive. So it's actually been written about a lot, but maybe not from a physician's perspective.
Okay.
It's not my research, but it is at my institute.
Yeah.
Or a neurologist who takes care of babies with spinal muscular atrophy, which is a disease.
So what is your perspective on that?
I'm sorry?
What is your perspective on that?
I don't think I have a full answer for it.
Yeah.
And which, may be problematic for a article, but I do think that
Yeah.
to grapple with. And
Totally.
in the real world, we're so good at population health and managing the most expensive but common conditions, cognitive medicine, implementation science, and other such things. We have enough reserves left over to take care of the very rare cases. So,
yeah, absolutely. And so often, like, it's great if you have a strong opinion and you can argue a really clear line on something, but sometimes an issue is more one that where you really need to evaluate both sides and just present the evidence on the whole issue. And so that's, that doesn't rule it out just because you don't have a really clear opinion. I think that means you're a really, intelligent, really educated person in your field, and you don't have a clear opinion. That's important, right? Because it's a really tough issue.
well, there's a
Yeah.
tension between the needs of society
Yeah.
and
Exactly.
every single parent of a child you ask thinks it's worth it. So that's
Yeah. Yeah. And immediately what comes to mind there for me is like, what would be an amazing story would be a collaboration between a physician and a bioethicist, for instance. Yeah, thank you. And I would have to suggest that you pitch that to the US health editor. He's called Lynn Anderson. Please, yeah. I think you were, yeah.
I don't know. Insomnia in pregnancy is common, but it's not normal.
Oh, fascinating. Not normal. What does that mean, not normal?
So about 30% of pregnant women have a clinically significant presentation of insomnia.
Uh-huh.
But because it's so normal to have a minor sleep disturbance when you're pregnant, like having to go pee or feeling uncomfortable, people are generally not screened and they're not treated. So women with really serious insomnia come in and they tell their provider, I can't sleep, and the provider
And it's
says,
dismissed, right?
just deliver. But what we know is that in pregnancy, if you have insomnia, it's quite a linear trajectory, so you're going to still have insomnia in the postpartum.
That was me.
Yeah.
Like serious insomnia, postpartum as well. Yeah.
And it's hard on women. It predicts postpartum depression.
Yeah.
It predicts preterm births.
Yeah.
But just generally, people don't think it's a problem.
So what's the treatment?
So as you probably know, all the medical treatments are off-label, and they're pretty highly teratogenetic. So people shouldn't take any medication in pregnancy. But we have a pretty good treatment called cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, which
really?
Yeah, it produces clinically significant remission in like 90% of the women who get it, but it's almost not available at this point.
So that's working with your thoughts?
Yeah, and behaviors.
Right.
Yeah, and people
Amazing.
have thought it doesn't work in pregnancy because of hormonal changes, but it works just fine. It's just not being offered to pregnant women.
And you've done research on this? Okay, please, I'd love you to write this story. I think that's a really amazing story. Thank you. Yeah, so please pitch it to me.
Sorry, but I think we'll make you busier.
I know, yeah.
I know.
Be able to...
It's okay.
You're going to get a flood of studies.
Just don't all send them tomorrow.
Okay.
But leave it a few days. If you all sent me a pitch and it was like a story that had to go out next week, I'd have to turn a lot of them down. But if they're stories that we can schedule over time, that's great.
Can I ask you a question? Because we have big meta-analysis coming out of pregnancy and insomnia, but it's going to be in like 4 months. So would you rather I pitched it now, or is it better to wait until the story is actually scheduled to come out?
Do you have any research published already on it?
Yeah, like a lot.
Yeah, so you can write it already. You don't need to wait for the next study. I mean, all we care about is that there is research. Yeah, I would do it now. I think it's a great topic, a great story.
It was also highlighted in Goop recently, and I felt really ashamed about that.
Oh, really?
I need to do a legitimate.
Excellent. Yeah, but something like that is great. Like, people don't know about it. Like, it's dismissed by it's perfect. Yeah. Any others? I'm dying to hear the ideas you have, even if they're just like half-baked. Yeah.
I would write about why parents should fear measles.
Okay.
There's been a lot of talk about its resurgence, but I don't think there's much understanding of what the illness is really like.
Yeah.
I spent 2 years looking after a measles ward.
In Africa?
I know it intimately.
Really?
And what's being adequately emphasized is the extreme contagiousness of the virus, the severity of the illness. Nobody emphasizes that there's no specific treatment. I don't think people realize that. They're so used to having a problem and doctor having a fix.
Yeah.
You don't have one. And it results in frequent complications, even in previously healthy kids.
So I would love you to write that story too. And something I was going to talk about in a minute, if I have time, is sometimes, because a lot of you are clinician researchers, a story can draw from your clinical practice and your research. And sometimes having a personal element really strengthens a story. Sometimes a story overlaps with a personal life too, right? A lot of people are researching in areas for a reason, and there's a personal reason there too. And sometimes those can be the strongest stories that we run. So, for instance, with your story, I would start your story with, I ran a measles ward in Africa for 2 years. I know what the impacts of measles are. You'd start your story that way, and you'd draw on the research, but you'd also draw on your first-hand experience of dealing with kids with measles. Yeah.
Well, I'm a big guy was referring to a story of a child who died and then suddenly just pick up. This is just an issue of time before we have a child dying from it.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Yeah. No. Yeah, and I've actually been looking for people to write about something interesting about vaccination. And so please, if you're interested in actually writing that story, I'd love to work with you on it. Yeah. Will you? Yeah? Awesome.
I'm a vaccine specialist.
Yeah, I would love that. That would be really amazing. Remind me to give you I'll give you my contact up there. Yeah.
So I have two questions. I kind of straddle health and education.
Okay.
So, one of ours would be, even when kindergarten age speech problems resolve, children still lag behind in reading and math in grade 3. So do you have any more education, health, or would you, because part of my problem as a researcher is that sometimes we don't, because we straddle.
Yeah, of course.
It seems to be difficult to, even with regular papers, place them.
I find a lot of child-focused research straddles health and education quite often. I actually used to be the health and the education editor when we started out, because we all had lots of jobs. I was a science editor too for a bit. So that was easy then. I do a lot of those kind of crossover stories. Now we have an education editor. That one I would probably suggest sending to her. But when you fill in the pitch, you get to select health or education.
That's my existential problem.
I know. I can see that. Yeah.
But the beauty of some of the work
Yeah.
being done
Is this cross-disciplinary? Yeah. No, totally. And we understand that, and we work like that. You just select which you think is the most. You have to make a choice. Then it would go to me or Susanna, our education editor. But if it's a crossover piece, what happens is we work together. So we always have a second editor proofreading a piece. And if it's a case where she took it, but she was like, well, this is quite health, Heather. I want you to review this one with me. We'd work on it together. Yeah, and it would go on the health page and the education page, and it would be pitched to editors as both. Yeah. So yeah, we do, I'm an interdisciplinary researcher. I think some of the best research is at the boundaries. So we totally embrace that. You just have to send it to one of us, right? So yeah. So oh no. I don't know if I need to be on there right now. We're almost out of time. There we go, there's the stat. 44% of viewers read the complete article. Okay, I was actually almost right. I'm going to give you some quick writing tips. I've got 5 minutes. 700 to 800 words, evidence-based analysis, written in the first person. You write I or we. Yeah. Every single claim should be hyperlinked to a source of evidence. I said that already. Simple, clear, conversational, jargon-free language. Would your neighbor on the bus understand, right? You're not writing for an expert audience. Our readability target is an educated 16-year-old. Higher than the regular mainstream media, much lower than your scholarly audience, obviously. I really recommend working hard on the opening paragraphs to the piece. Try and bring the reader in, entice the reader, but also deliver the main facts and arguments of the story. Don't bury gold at the bottom of the article, because there's 56% of readers who don't make it to the bottom of the article. So you need to tell them what's important right up front. We ask everybody who's an author to put themselves in the piece, somewhere in the top 3 paragraphs. Introduce yourself. Now, it doesn't have to be like this isn't a big bio or CV. This is like a sentence, explaining why you're the expert on this topic. And I really ask you to tell the story that you really care about and that you really feel needs to be told. Don't worry about what you think people want to hear, You're the expert. You're passionate about your work. You tell what you feel needs to be told. And you can be bold, you can have fun. It's not like writing an academic piece, and this is what I hear a lot from authors, is that why they like to write for us, is that it's something different, it's fun, it's lighter, it's an enjoyable way to kind of get into your research in a different way. And we do ask that you're prepared to compromise on headlines, because we have the expertise on headlines. The purpose of the headline is not to summarize your research. The purpose of the headline is to draw the reader in, to click on that link and read your piece. So we do things, we work with search engine optimization, we use words in particular orders. We do things to help more people find your piece when they're Googling something, right? When they're Googling like pregnancy and insomnia, right? We need those words in the headline so that it comes up when they Google. So we do ask for your trust in that. And they're not the same as academic titles, which, it's just different. Yeah, I don't need to do that. I've got some examples of opening paragraphs just to show the variety of ways you can start a piece, There's 3 if you want to read them. And I'm going to go fast. There's a couple more. And one, the first paragraph was just, cheese. A food as nutritious as it is delicious. Or is it? Right? And some of them are longer. There's a long first paragraph. But it's actually telling the story, like right there and then, up front. And then in the piece, sometimes this is the first paragraph, sometimes it's the second, sometimes it's the third. But you really need a paragraph that tells the reader what this story is about. This is a really neat, concise one here. More than 1 in 10 Canadians would like to be in an open relationship, according to our recent study of 2003 Canadian adults. Who are you to tell it? This is the part where I was saying, use a sentence somewhere up top to describe who you are and why you're an expert. Sometimes, you decide what's the most important about your expertise. For this woman, it was much more important to her that she's an American Indian woman who recently moved to Canada. That came up before the fact that she's head of the First Nations House of Learning at UBC, right? The personal and the academic are so intertwined in this case. We also ran a story by someone who's a medical librarian, and she lost her twins to stillbirth at 36 weeks, and she wrote a book about it, about the information that was available. And this is probably the hardest hitting story I've worked on in the last 2 years. A war made me realize the world needs biomedical engineers. She starts, it was a sunny and pleasant spring day in Dezful, a small city in the south part of Iran. There were not many people on the street, but I remember a young teenager pedaling slowly on his bike. I remember him because a moment later he was decapitated by a piece of metal when an Iraqi missile hit the neighborhood. His headless body pedaled for a while before falling to the ground. Everything in that moment registered in my brain like a scene in slow motion. In shock, all I was thinking was, wow, how can the body balance without the brain? The body's motion must have also been programmed in the spinal cord. It's an incredible story of, it was a health and education story actually, of biomedical engineering as a career. This is how she began it because this is the reason she began her career, because of this experience. And it was a beautiful story. But that's just to show that you can start in many ways. You can start with a statistic, you can start with a description of your research, or you can start with a personal. So we like to be a safe place for academics. We're welcoming and friendly and listen to your concerns and want to help you get your research out there. So you can sign up for our newsletter there. Follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and my email is there if you would like to write to me. Yeah.
So it's free access to the website?
Yes.
Anytime?
Yes.
No limit on...
No. Yes.
And so all the university that contribute, you are in good shape? I mean, in terms of budget?
Yes. But we're always looking for more. Because then we can expand our team and write more stories, right? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we've grown our team recently with 2 new members.
Would you be open to, let's say, organizations, like the one I am responsible for, which is the National Research Network, MySource, doing some preliminary work for you, so identifying story, maybe drafting the first draft with the literature, and then, because it sounds that you would limit the number of stories because you are already overwhelmed, right? So
yeah, it wouldn't. We encourage researchers to work directly with us. Yeah, we don't find it helps the process. Like what they do, if they want help from their communications departments when they're writing, we don't have control over that, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, they're the only ones who are able to access our editorial system. We are working, coaching directly with them, and yeah, that's kind of the way we do it. Yeah.
I don't know if it's been established, but it seems if there's grad students that are doing research are interested in journalism, it could be a unique opportunity for them.
Yes, absolutely.
With you guys, is that something that has been established in other?
It's something we've talked about. We haven't done it yet. Simply, I think, because we're a startup and we're just
many grad students, especially if they like the research, but they realize they don't want to become academics.
Yes, yeah, they want to be
And
communicators.
they like
Yeah.
I guess that maybe,
yeah. I mean, our founders are Mary Lynn Young and Alf Hamida, who are professors in journalism at UBC. Yeah, so the plan has been to have we've had some people working with us who are Masters of Journalism students, just working as research assistants on certain things.
Maybe get some funding for them.
Yes, yeah.
So that it's free for you guys.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I mean, interns obviously require management and training too. So I think, in our first couple of years, we've been really just going at it, and it's kind of stretched, but definitely, yeah.
This is the question for the senior people in the room, maybe those that have been on promotion and tenure committees. And the answer is for the junior people in the room who are going up for promotion or tenure someday. So when you review a CV and you see a reference to an article that was published in the media, in the newspaper, or on this website, how do your promotion rules allow for that to carry significant weight in the process?
Well, certainly
this would be instead of peer-reviewed publications, they would be in addition to lots of high-impact peer-reviewed.
That's what I hear from some of the senior academics that I've been working with. Yeah,
So
it's exactly that.
thing,
Yeah.
you still need to have.
Yeah. And remember, like one of our authors said, it took her half a day. So, you know, your research is taking up a lot of time. Your publications are obviously the most important thing, but this is an extra thing, right? Yeah.
I see a trend amongst junior faculty at our place, at least, to differentially go to online blogs and other outlets, maybe not as sophisticated and credible as yours, and that becomes their academic passion.
Right.
And, I think that's problematic in most academic positions when you begin to assess the weight of their contribution to the field when it leans towards alternate outlets. So I was just curious, so do you count it as knowledge translation?
It could be considered as that, but we would also want to see the peer-reviewed publications as well. Faculty Evaluation Committee, University of Alberta, in faculty nursing.
No, I don't sit on meetings, but I'm guessing that it differs between courses while you're taking projects and that very active different than if you're working on secondary.
Yeah.
More public related areas.
Yeah. I mean, my experience is that people are finding they use it as knowledge translation, knowledge mobilization, you know, and it's helpful on grants. It's helpful in promotion. I mean, of course, it's not replacing academic work. That's not the purpose of it. The purpose is to just help you guys disseminate. Yeah.
Well, the nice thing too is you can access them afterwards.
Yes. Exactly. This is what's very helpful. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I get lots of emails. How many people? Well, you know, go look at your dashboard. It's all there, and you can put that. You can write that down on your grant application. You know, and you can write down this was in the National Post. This was in the Washington Post. Whatever. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I have another one in 20 minutes, so I'm gonna take a break. Thank you so much. Yeah.